Welcome to this PayTrace webinar. My name is Sam Johnson. I'm the Partner Success Manager here at PayTrace. And joining me today is our Director of Marketing, Mary Miller, along with our Vice President of Product, Jeremy Bogert. Now, we're going to be going through a really great presentation on PayTrace's integration for embedded payments within Microsoft Dynamics Business Central. You are muted if you're attending this live. And if you have questions, comments, or emotional outbursts, we do encourage those. Please use the Q&A box that's on your Zoom panel. And we'll have some time at the end of today's call to go ahead and address those. So without further ado, I'd like to hand this over to Mary Miller to tell you a little bit about some B2B payments and some of the challenges that a lot of businesses find with that.
Awesome. Thanks, Sam. And thanks, everybody, for joining us today. As Sam mentioned, we're going to talk about the B2B payments need inside of Business Central, but let's talk a little bit more holistically about what's going on in the market and why this embedded B2B payments is such a challenge for many organizations. What we see when we talk to customers and partners on a regular basis is that there are very slow manual processes still in place, even today, even in 2024, that a lot of us deal with that really takes a long time for us to receive, way more time than we would want for our organization to receive payment from the invoices that we issue to our business customers. What we see in that traditional payment sales cycle is that the DSO, the day sales outstanding, can be more than 28 days on average. And that's a long time to wait for the money once you've delivered a product or a service or goods have been shipped to a partner manufacturer, distributor, or whatever. And there's a lot of risk for human error in that process. The other thing is that we're experiencing this disconnected buying experience. I don't know about you, but when I want to buy something as a consumer, the first place I go is online or on my phone. Well, guess what? That is translating already and has been now for a few years. As you can imagine, many of us started working from home and all of a sudden our worlds merged, right, in a way that they probably hadn't been in a while. But our consumer expectations for being able to buy quickly and easily and online and with our credit cards, even in a business experience, became our expectation. 7 out of 10 business to business buyers want to be able to purchase digitally in that same consumer-like experience that we have every day. So we want to be able to work with multiple payment options and let our customers pay us in the way that's most convenient for them. What we're also seeing at the accounting executive level and at the CFO level is that they are really trying to address these challenges with technology. They've realized that the distributed work environment has created a need to automate things, increase visibility, increase digital workflows for them to be able to manage their accounts receivable process and have really good visibility into it. So they're looking at payments and spend management as the top of the list of priorities because cash is king, right? Who doesn't want to get their cash faster? This is what CFOs are really saying, is that it's important for them to be able to automate, especially their spend management processes, so that they can collect payments faster. We're also going to continue to gain analytics into that buying behavior because digital data is going to give us way more insight than receiving paper checks and such in the mail. So these are some of the challenges that we're seeing in the market. Now, why digital B2B payments? Well, for one thing, the market is huge and growing, $27.5 trillion in B2B commerce. Now, that's important for two reasons. One is that the more we can capitalize on that environment, even as businesses collecting money, right? We know this is the direction of the industry. We want to be able to capitalize on that as businesses that are sending invoices to our customers. It's only going to continue to grow. It's only going to continue to increase in efficiency for our business too. That's where I think the real key is, that if we can help organizations capture money faster, track it more digitally, track it more efficiently, that's going to reduce the risk for error, fraud. It's going to reduce that day sales outstanding. All of those factors come into play when we look at the size of the market, not just the big number, but of course that it's going to grow. And as more and more efficiencies are built into that process, the more we're going to be able to leverage that to accelerate our cash flow. The next point here actually pains me because I've been in accounting teams before and I've lived and breathed this world. 35% of finance teams struggle with credit and collections. If your phone's ringing more in your finance department than it is in your sales department, something's wrong, friends. We want to fix that, right? We want to be able to collect the money that our business is owed and not have our team being taken up with making outbound phone calls. When can I expect to receive that payment? Those sorts of things. Those are very detrimental and very time consuming, very tedious tasks, and they can tend to wear on our small accounting and finance teams that could be much better serving our organization with things like financial analysis and visibility into cash flow and being able to work on future projections and budgets and optimizing our corporate spend. Okay. 75%, next point, 75% of B2B products are already purchased online. Now, again, I don't know about you, but it's not a whole lot of fun when you have to make a big purchase, put it on your corporate credit card or your personal credit card and wait for either reimbursement or approval, or if you have a separate card that you need to put that on so you can manage it better. Now you're tracking another element of expense. So we want to make it easy again for our business buyers to buy just the way that we do as consumers. And to prove that point out, 93% of organizations that are beginning to implement AR automation, even up to 50% of it, even if they have taken that first step in automation, are seeing significant growth, significant expansion, and huge efficiencies in that process, reducing those manual steps and errors.
I think one thing I want to point out on this, Mary, is that 75% of B2B products purchased online. What we're about to show is that while a lot of these products and solutions are able to be purchased in a very convenient digital way, right? We're not filling out, I don't even remember what you call them, coupon books.
Purchase recs and coupon books and order forms, the
order
triplicate,
forms, right?
The order forms and triplicate. Oh, I remember those days
Your
well.
catalogs.
Sadly, yeah.
But we're still writing paper checks and we're still doing very manual paper invoicing for billing, which is not convenient for the customer or for the buyer or the supplier. So I know you've got some solutions for that.
Absolutely. And case in point here, Sam, great point. What we see in the industry right now, even today, is that the majority of companies are still collecting payments in check. Now, again, with companies that had to move to a very remote environment during the last several years and during COVID especially, what we saw is that very few people were going into the office, but guess who always went in? Accounting and finance, because they had to issue the invoices and they had to collect the checks and make the deposits. So somebody on this team is burdened with now this additional manual step of going in, picking them up. In fact, I talked to customers that said we'd go in and pick things up. Then we would FedEx them to our CFO if they needed some, second level approval, or we'd have to send them over to whoever was that had the ability to take them to the bank or be able to deposit them, whoever has the right authority in these processes, right? And that's painful to even think about. So I can only imagine those organizations that were dealing with that and that potentially are still dealing with that today, that that manual step still exists for 63% of organizations that are still collecting payments via check. Now, the encouraging part of that, to your point, Sam, as well, is that as people look at that digital experience, we're seeing ACH and credit card climb up, capture a little bit bigger slice of the pie, right, where they can start accepting things digitally. But I think there's still a lot of awareness and education that organizations need to understand the true value of this and what the process looks like with and without digital processes and digital steps and automation in that. So our whole goal would be to help organizations reduce that percentage of checks that they are receiving today or issuing today, and really increase that digital experience for them based on how we can help them automate those processes. Jeremy, maybe you can walk us through that process of what it looks like and kind of the pains along the way that we're seeing with customer experience today.
Yeah, happy to. So I want to walk through a little bit of kind of the context of, what is, when we say AR automation, when we talk about our applications in Business Central, what are we really talking about? And what does that complexity look like? Because ultimately, we've talked about, credit card processing, ACH on the last slide. It's important to have a lot of flexibility because you never know, what might come down, hopefully not another COVID event or something like that. But the companies that had invested in the digital tools and were already set up, we're in a much better position. Pretty much every partner I talked to immediately after COVID was, well, now my entire customer list suddenly believes in the cloud, and we have every single project to try to get people there. Right? We don't want to be in that position. We want to be digitized before that, so we have a lot more flexibility. And you can look at this. What does AR automation look like without, or what does AR process look like without automation? And maybe this looks like a worst case scenario, right? Step 1 to 10. I'll walk through these in a second. But it honestly isn't even, this isn't even a worst case scenario, because this is just one mode. I think Sam alluded to this. Even if you have a B2B portal or something else that's taking your orders, those are flowing differently through a whole different process than your B2C customers' orders are. Right. So when you look at, where payments come into this AR automation process, you already have several different processes that live inside of this, right? You've got prepayment, you've got, on account and the whole terms process, all that customer ingestion, all that stuff can make this even more muddy than it looks like here. But even this as just a simple terms process without AR automation, customers buying, we're going through that entire shipping process. That happens between step 1 and 2, which also has a whole bunch of nuance that can happen. If we're doing any sort of prepayment in there, if we're doing deposits against orders. But you get to, step 2 through 10 here, and it's printing out those invoices, putting them in the mail or emailing them. Customer gets it, then they have 30 days. Okay, does anybody really respect that? Maybe they will. Then they get the invoice, they cut checks, that goes through their entire process, all of their approvals on their side. They submit payment back to us. Let's just say it's a check. Worst case, it comes back, it goes in the mail. Somebody has to slice it open, manually key that back into the system, take it to the bank all the way through, and then we get to deposit to the bank. And then the fun starts with bank rec, right? Even at that point. So when we look at it, what we really want to be able to do is map our real lives and how it work, into the system. So, like in PayTrace, and we'll talk about some of the options here on prepayment. We have a lot of options about, automating. Okay, we have cards on file, automating authorizations, automating captures at the right point in the process on the prepayment side. On the back end of the process, we can take credit card or ACH, at cash receipt time. We'll soon have our digital invoicing portal out there as well, where people can get to it. You can add our payment links onto your invoices if you want a really lightweight way to do it. But the main point that I want to get to is it's really kind of about that flexibility. And so if you go to the next slide, Sam, we'll talk a little bit about, on the prepayment side. So if we don't have someone set up on terms, we have a lot of different levers to pull to make sure that we're mapping the process, right? If we want to do automatic authorizations, we can do that on quotes and on orders already. And then we can have that capture at different points in the process, whether that's on posting or whether that's on shipments. All of that sort of thought through to make sure that we're really mapping different processes and having different ability to capture at different times to get those payments in there without having someone having to go in and touch, every single invoice. So really that focus is on automation and the configurability to handle it, in different scenarios, being able to define which payment terms on a customer, aligned to prepayment versus on terms, to change that automation as well. So a lot of tools in there to really kind of speed up and make sure that there aren't as little human involvement as possible in a lot of the areas that we have there. So I think next, Mary is going to show us a little bit of what that looks like in Business Central.
Indeed. Let's do that. I'm going to share here. Sam, take over the screen from me here for a bit. Let me know when you can see my screen.
I can see it.
Perfect. Okay, so we're going to jump into Business Central here, and as many of you have probably worked in this environment before, the structure on the sales side can go from the steps that Jeremy just outlined. Issue the quote, convert that to an order, convert that to an invoice, and then begin the collections process. What we can do is streamline essentially all of those steps, as he described, into just one or two, depending on how you're going to be shipping or collecting or invoicing your customers. So I'm going to start by showing a little bit about where PayTrace lives in the customer card, and then we'll walk through, take a look at sales orders and sales invoices and where we come to life in that environment. And I can tell you from working with partners and customers over the years that one of the most important things when it comes to mid-market organizations is they want that ease of use experience and the solution that they're working with to be as embedded as possible into the ERP system. Again, we have small teams. Jeremy just mentioned that, a lot of people were, dealing with the transition to digital by force at the beginning of COVID, right? But now all of us expect that. And so, but we still have small teams. And so we want those teams to be enabled in learning, one or two core systems that they need to run their business, and not, 5 or 6 or 10 other extra interfaces that they have to learn or become experts in. So right inside of Business Central, You'll find PayTrace on multiple different cards and pages in the system. We're going to start first on a customer card here that I just created today just as an example for us. And we're going to take a look at where PayTrace comes to life in that. So let's say we're working with a new customer. We need to set them up. I'm not going to do all the data entry here because you all know how to do that. So I've saved us the time. But here's where PayTrace comes to life, right here in the home row navigation, just as you would expect for any of your other process steps that you need to execute for a customer or an order or an invoice. And under authorizations and payments, you'll see we can add a customer credit card. We can create an authorization and payment right here from the customer, or we can view payment history for that specific customer. So let's take a look at their credit card setup here right now. Now, in this middle part of the customer credit card box, you're going to see that we have an option here to either add or update a card. Now, I can only update a card if I've already entered one, in which case I have, but we're going to pretend that we already that we haven't done that yet. So we're going to enter a new credit card. So we're given the message that these are our required fields. Fantastic. So we're just going to pop one in here and try to make sure that I count the right number of checks. There we go. And pick a future expiration date so that we can make sure this processes correctly. And we're going to add this card to this customer. Now, the reason that it took a second or two to process that and think about it before that page, that section of the screen loaded, is because that data is coming from PayTrace. It's not living in the customer world. It's entirely managed and PCI compliant, securely stored in our systems. And so the interface here is very real and very native and embedded, but we're storing that credit card information for them so the customer isn't at risk for having any of this data exposed. Okay, so now we have this customer credit card on file, right? So if we move forward then and want to process quotes, invoices, orders for that customer, we can come over into our sales. I'm going to jump straight into sales orders. Let's pretend we already issued the quote and they said it was good to go. We'll come into our sales orders and open that up. And this, the way that PayTrace manifests itself inside of Business Central is going to be very similar. So I'm not going to walk through every screen that every page that we're visible on, but you're going to still find that authorizations and payments option for us available here. Now I've already entered the order information. Again, save us the data entry time, right? We'll make it efficient. I'm now given the option to create another authorization or payment here, or I can view payment history. The create authorization is the same as the field that we just looked at. So we can see here if they've made any other payments or orders. And once we process one, those will show up here for this given customer. So let's go ahead and create an authorization for this order that we just created right before we jumped on the call today. So we'll go ahead and select this detail. Again, we've got the credit card information on file, or we can go ahead and enter it here. So either way, you'll be able to do that too. Let me just pop this in. And we'll process this payment here and authorize the payment for this customer order. And it says, it's going to tell us, of course, we can save it. It's going to give us an authorization message here. So the whole idea here is that, yep, successfully approved. The whole idea here is that we don't have to leave the system. We can pull that card information in right into the Business Central experience. We can post that order, we can post the invoice, and all of that will carry through to our GL. So the experience for our accounting teams, our finance teams, our sales teams, whoever is entering this information is again embedded right inside Business Central. I'm going to pause there for a second. Jeremy, any tips or guidance on what else you'd like to highlight?
Yeah, I think one other thing to highlight is, we are tying into the Business Central thing. So if you see on the bottom right there where it says open authorizations, you can actually see as you get in here on the tiles, this also exists on the customer card. So you can see your authorizations across all, orders from the customer card as well. If you want to go just starting from like card first to go finish a transaction out, you can absolutely do that from the customer card. So areas like that where we're using the tiles there in Business Central, or like assisted setup, which we'll see some screenshots for later. We're definitely baking this deeply into kind of native BC IP.
Yep, absolutely. And again, having been on the accounting side before, if you do have to do any data entry or keying in or looking anything up or checking on the status of an invoice or anything like that, you want to be able to do as much of that as possible right inside Business Central, which is what we're enabling here. One other thing I'll just highlight over here as we go into the sales invoice process, again, those same options are going to be available for us as an ability to process the payment. You just come down here. Oh, I must have already posted it. I'll just grab one here that's still pending. We can again see all of the details there. Let's click on this guy. We can get into the payments and let's see, maybe we have some history on this one. No, not that guy. Sorry, I picked the wrong one. There's another one that has a lot of really good history. Must have already been posted. But anyway, so you'll be able to see all of the payments. You'll be able to see how they were processed. You'll be able to see what stage they're in, if they're in capture, if they're in authorization, and be able to drill into that as well. One of the things that we also wanted to show you is a quick view of what the setup process is like, just how quick and simple. And for that, I'm going to turn it back to Sam to share some screenshots of it. But the functionality that we've walked through here from a authorizations and payments functionality is going to be available again across several different pages in Business Central, and will function the same way as you would expect for that stage in the sales process, right? Orders, of course, you're going to be a little bit more limited because they may not be ready to process the payment based on that, but or quotes rather. But once you get to orders and invoices, all of those you'll be able to capture and authorize and process the payment right there. Jeremy, do you want to talk us through the setup a little bit here?
Yeah, so this is after you install the extension, you get the setup prompt and you go through. And honestly, it's pretty simple here. So you're going to already have a PayTrace gateway account. So you'll go in, put in your integrator ID from there, put in all the basic credentials, and then it pretty much is a couple screens that just walks you through. And this is pretty much it. So just it's really 5 minutes from you get your PayTrace account, you pull all the credentials down from there, put them in here, fill out a few things. You're going to go to the next screen here, Sam. Is there another one here for the customer setups?
This is it.
This is the one. Okay, we don't have it. So you've got setups for what are your prepaid terms so that we can do automation there. When do you want to go capture? So there's a few other settings besides the connections here, but it's pretty simple. I mean, it is a couple options, setting it in a couple different places, and you're ready to go.
And I want to just add a little bit onto that. This is taken a massive leap over the last couple of years, because I remember when we first started getting into ERP integrations, whether it was NetSuite or Dynamics or any of the big softwares out there, the implementation time used to be weeks, right? A lot of these were very custom and diving in and messing up your accounts and playing around with it, and it was rough. I'm not gonna lie. So the fact that you can literally get this up and running in a couple of minutes and have that seamless transition to just start processing payments through BC is phenomenal. It's such a nice user experience. So, we've touched a lot on the BC side of things and the demo of it, but I do want to add in a little bit more color about the payment side, because there are a few different BC solutions out there today. But why is PayTrace different? What sets us apart from a lot of the other solutions that are out there? And one of the things I want to focus on is the actual cost of acceptance, specifically when we look at credit cards. When we look back at the slide that Mary talked about, where the credit card makeup is only 7% of all B2B payments, that number is going to be growing probably at a pretty fast clip over the next few years. Buyers are now wanting to pay by card. That's their preferred payment method. All the issuers, Visa, MasterCard, the banks are trying to get cards out there as kind of that preferred payment technology over checks and ACH. So we're going to see a lot of growth in that. But on our side, on the supplier side, one of the biggest kind of headaches with that is costs, right? Cards are going to have a cost associated with them. So I've got this graph up here. You can see kind of where the money moves with accepting payments, keeping it in very basic numbers. If there's a $100 payment, there's going to be some fees taken out on that credit card payment along the way. A big portion of that is this fee called interchange that goes to the issuing bank. On this example, it's only 1.75%. That's actually a very low rate typically from what we see. But then there's fees that go to the card networks, to the processor. Ultimately, at the end of the day, you as a business, when you accept a card transaction, are going to have a small percentage that goes into all these different fees, these different buckets. One of the things that PayTrace does really well is we take a look at that interchange number, that one that goes to that bank, And we're able to mitigate the costs on that by leveraging data. So what I mean by that is the card brands, specifically Visa and MasterCard, that are issuing a lot of these corporate cards, purchasing cards, and virtual cards that you may be seeing pretty prevalent right now. Interchange rates aren't necessarily fixed at one static number. There's actually different qualification values that we can land for those cards. And you'll see here on this chart, there are these things called level 2 and level 3, which are actually significantly better rates than what some of the more standard rates are associated with those. So what's really great about PayTrace is that we're able to help businesses qualify for these lowest possible rates, regardless on what type of card it is, but to make sure that we are automatically sending out all the information to the card brands to make sure that businesses get that best rate possible. And we're doing that automatically, right? For a lot of solutions that say they can support this, there's going to be more manual processes, right? There's going to be data entry and all that stuff. So we're really good at being able to manage some of the costs of accepting payments, the actual, physical number costs that you see on a statement. Now, beyond just the intrinsic costs that are built into this, we also do a really great job in a lot of other areas. A lot of it is reducing costs in labor and time spent processing these, and actually time value of money when it comes to receiving your payments, right? We're helping businesses get paid faster. If we remember the slide that Jeremy talked about with more of the manual invoicing process, it can take 4 to 6 weeks, sometimes even months, to collect on a payment when you're doing it more or less manually. Right? There's actually a cost to that when you think about it, especially if we're having to borrow off of dollars that we don't have today, right, to make payments. There's all sorts of interest rates if we're taking out loans. There's literally the value of inflation, which is still fairly high right now. So a dollar today is worth a lot more than a dollar 30 days, 90 days from now. So by digitizing, automating some of these payments, we're going to help get that in quicker. Mary talked quite a bit about the struggles of working on a finance team, right? If a business has a dedicated AR team, that's awesome. It's going to make their lives a lot easier. But what we find is a lot of businesses don't have just a dedicated AR team, right? It's going to be somebody in bookkeeping or accounting, or back when I was doing this stuff, I was actually a salesperson doing a lot of the AR, which is not fun. So being able to give minutes back to our staff to do what they're supposed to do, that's actually driving a lot of value, and letting technology help assist with the rest. Real-time visibility, super important, right? Again, when we send out physical invoices, we get them in the mail, you can't see where they are, you don't know what's happening. With this, we can track really start to finish where we are in the payment process, so that we can have an expectation on what our cash flow looks like. Mary threw out PCI earlier. We love PCI because it provides security, but we also don't like PCI because it's typically a lot of work. If you are accepting payments, there's a lot of check boxes and checks and balances to go through. PayTrace makes PCI super easy, right? We're providing technology that's extremely secure. That's going to make sure that you're not seeing fraud, you're seeing as little fraud as possible, and that your customers are going to see and feel secure, right, making a payment. We talked about the reducing transaction fees. Last thing on here is just the value of support. We work really close with partners and businesses to make sure that they have the solutions that they need. If they need to talk to somebody, we're extremely accessible. We're going to have some contact information here in a little bit at the end. But I can attest to this. Prior to working at PayTrace, I used to use PayTrace as a solution, as a user. And we had questions, right? We're not getting paid. If there's an issue with something, we want to talk to somebody. So I would literally pick up the phone, call our support number, and somebody was on the line with me within 20 seconds or less. And that's not a unique scenario. That's the expectation. So right? All this stuff is really what's going to make PayTrace going to be the best solution for our partners and our users. Don't just take my word for it. We actually have a case study. So this is a really cool success story that came about a few years ago. A company called Tough Shed. A lot of you might use them. They make some pretty tough sheds. They had a lot of issues. Jeremy's grimacing. I had to look at your face.
Good stuff. Good stuff. In fact, quick aside, Sam, our
Please.
company COO actually just built a she shed, or is about to build a she shed for his wife with Tough Shed. So we're
Really?
continuing to, bring them business as well. Yeah.
I love it. Full circle. We
Full circle.
support our customers.
Yep.
That's awesome. I didn't know that. So when we were first introduced to Tough Shed, they had a lot of issues, challenges, we'll say. And a lot of them they didn't really know at the time were issues because it was status quo for them, right? They had been doing it this way for a while. They didn't want to change things. But we came in and we did a bit of analysis and realized that they were still living in the 20th century. They were using outdated credit card terminals. And what I mean by this is not only were the credit card terminals outdated, but the fact that they were using credit card terminals for their back office transactions was just bad. They literally had devices plugged into their phone jacks in their office that they had to go in and punch in credit card numbers. With that, it wasn't really compliant. They were still writing down payments on pieces of paper. They were not doing things best practices. And they had rolled out this really great CRM, right? We're talking about BC on this call. They weren't using BC at the time, but they were using a different type of software. So they had a CRM that they had rolled out, but it was not in any way, shape, or form connected to their payments. So they were having to process payments, go into their software, update their customer's profile, and it created a lot of error, duplication of work, right? And a lot of increased costs along with that. So what we did is we came in, we actually integrated our payments into their CRM directly through our API. So when you look at today, how they're processing, everything's digital. It's directly through their CRM, their native solution. Over the last few years that they've been using PayTrace, they've settled over $400 million in total process volume. And they predict that their data entry time has been reduced by over 15% from what they were doing before. So you can imagine with that much volume that's hitting their system, 15% is pretty significant, right? And one thing that I really like about this case study, and really with most of our partner and case studies that we look at, is that we're not increasing their costs. And in most cases, we are reducing the costs of card acceptance and payment acceptance, sometimes significantly reducing that. So really great solution and a really, really cool client. So with that said, we've been talking a lot about PayTrace. A lot of you on this call maybe not be super familiar with us. You might have met us out at some shows. We're actually going to be out at DynamicsCon Live here in a little bit next week. And then later we'll actually be at Community Summit. But just to establish a little bit more credibility, today we actually have about 40,000 businesses that use our payment solutions today. We've actually been around since 2004, so we're 20 years old as a company. We do work a lot with Microsoft partners, with reselling partners, referral partners. So if you are in that line of business, we have over 300 partners today. We're really partner centric, so we want to provide really great solutions for you and your customers. Or if you're an actual business user, we'd also like to chat with you. Last year, we processed over $48 billion on our system. So we have a lot of volume going through PayTrace, and that was over 65 million annual transactions. So, we talk about these numbers really not to brag or anything, but just to establish some credibility. We've been doing this a long time. We call ourselves the B2B payment experts, and we really want to live by that. So, Mary, Jeremy, anything to add to that?
I was just going to throw out there, Sam, you just talked about how in the case study example, we helped reduce their cost and introduced a number of measurable ROI points from a time save and all of that. One of the things that I think is a little bit behind the scenes sometimes is that people go, oh, well, if I'm processing invoices in the way that we've always done it, right? It's already built into our cost and built into our business as usual, to the point that you made earlier. But what a lot of companies maybe don't realize is that the cost of that is about $23 per invoice if you're doing it manually. So when you add those up and look at the number of invoices that you process on a monthly basis or an annual basis, chances are that cost is not being quantified in the way that people expect it to be, right? It's not a line item in your budget. Yes, you have a full-time headcount that's devoted to that, and to your point, maybe several other things, sales potentially, right? But the whole value of having automation and digital visibility into your payments enables that person or that team to focus on much higher value tasks and contributions to the company, right? Let's be forward thinking in our cash position. Let's be forward thinking in our financial analysis and planning and how we're going to be able to use technology to help us get there. So I think there's just more to that cost element. We could probably talk for another hour just on that. I know Jeremy's got tons of examples and ROI modeling and all of that kind of stuff that we could walk through if somebody's interested in getting into that level of detail. But I think just understanding that even if at a raw numbers kind of a perspective, take the number of invoices you're processing, multiply by 23, and then go, maybe there are some cost savings here that we need to take a look at from a digital perspective. So just wanted to throw that out there.
Awesome. Love it. All right. Well, like I said, next week we'll be at DynamicsCon Live. Mary and Jeremy will be there. We'll be live in person. So if you're going to be there as well, we'd love to get some FaceTime with you and learn a little bit more about your business and see if there's opportunity to partner. We're always putting out blogs, articles, some really cool educational type things. So if you want to learn a little bit more about who we are, what we do, feel free to check out our blog, go to our website. We've got a lot of different solutions on there. Jeremy rattled a bunch of them off. But we really do want to be a good fit for our partners for our B2B solution. So take a look, connect with us. Here's our contact information. We're going to keep it a little bit general for this call, but if you do want to get a hold of us directly, please reach out to sales@paytrace.com and somebody from our team will get back to you here pretty quickly. All right, so with that said, I'm going to open it up for discussion. I'm not seeing anything in our Q&A box, but we'll hang on for a minute or so. And while we're doing that, I'm actually going to launch a poll, if I can find it. If you do want somebody to follow up with you or you want to chat a little bit about our BC solutions or any other solutions that we have, feel free to use this poll that I just launched. And like I said, somebody from our team will reach out.
Jeremy, didn't mean to end the final thoughts there too. If you've got other comments or ideas that you'd like to leave the audience with, please.
No, I mean, I think you pretty much nailed it. I think the other thing besides the $23 per invoice, I think there's always some trepidation about changing the process or, what is so-and-so going to do if they're not, cutting invoices every day and or checks every day and take them to the bank. Is most of the time, those aren't the jobs that people enjoy anyway, the ones that are repetitive and, easily replaced. And so usually get a lot more user satisfaction as well as they can move on to things that are much more value added, less time intensive. And so it's usually that stuff sorts itself out pretty well and you end up with a happier team if you can automate a lot of those kind of menial tasks.
Agreed.
Great point.
All right. Well, I think we will go ahead and wrap this up. I want to thank our other hosts, Mary and Jeremy. Thank you all for sharing your thought expertise on this. And thank you everybody that joined as part of the audience. Hope you all have a fantastic rest of your week. Take care.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.